Welcome to A Lunch with Biggie, a podcast about small business and creatives sharing their stories and inspiring you. My guest today is a self-taught jewelry designer, metalsmith, whose business has evolved and shifted from not just simply trendy pieces, but also intricate heirloom jewelry. Please welcome the owner and designer of Shifted Jewelry, Samantha Lynch. What's going on, Sam? How you doing today?
Hi, I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much. I'm glad we got a chance to have a little lunch break with me, and I really appreciate it. What's your usual go-to lunch or sandwich?
Oh man. Okay, that's a great question. I've been on a big wraps kick.
Okay.
So I've been making wraps like crazy. I've been perfected the chicken Caesar salad wrap.
Okay.
So I've been making a lot of those.
So what was it that got you you hit that perfection level with is it the wrapping part of the wrap of wrapping it, or just the right amount of everything?
Yeah, I think it's the ratio of everything. And it's like the perfecting the crouton, I feel like is the biggest key. And then having small little croutons in it is really good.
I like that because you get that extra crunch. You get a little crunch
Yeah.
factor in it. I love that. And one thing that I love about you from our conversations, and what we can talk a little bit more about this as we go on how you and I chatted, but that you are one of those that likes to, you kind of get lost. It's kind of almost like a methodical thing where it allows you to get lost to kind of do the little things of maybe not making a quick meal, but actually preparing all the things like making your own croutons and things like that, which I think to a degree kind of plays a part into how you probably also doing jewelry. Cause I mean, that's something that's obviously very methodical, very it takes some time. It's not like you're whipping out pieces, very quickly. It's a process. So I know you've been in business 10 years. Tell people about how Shifted Jewelry started.
Oh man, the origin story. 10 years ago, yeah, I was never made jewelry before. I was getting married and decided to make all the bridesmaid jewelry because I couldn't afford to buy brand new jewelry. And so I made all the necklaces and I was like, oh, that was kind of fun. And then I kept making jewelry just for fun, just to sell at markets. And then it kind of took off. I had a little boy and who is almost 10 now. So it's been pretty much the entirety of his life has been me making jewelry. And it kind of just accidentally turned into a job or into a business. I was really just doing it for fun. And then thankfully, I feel like I started at a time before this huge boom in creators and stuff on the internet. And so we were able to really leverage social media back then when Instagram was popping off.
Yeah.
To sell just really easily. I didn't really have to try that hard, which was so crazy because now it's so opposite. So it kind of just catapulted the business, and we opened a mobile store. And then I did a few other little retail store pop-ups over, around the area in Orlando. And yeah, and then somehow 10 years later, I'm still here.
Well, and I think what's great is and I'm assuming during those 10 years, obviously you've definitely learned and mastered your trade. And because of that, it's kind of allowed you to start providing, come up with and get create new products, which I think is super, super important to be able to kind of do and evolve with your business. I remember well, let me preface a few things in the back, and we'll talk about. I always like to kind of sometimes tell people how I learned about my guests and
Yeah.
and things like that. So I knew about you obviously because you were originally your brand. I know it was originally called Gypset, and all of that. And then I followed you before I even had the podcast. I was following you because I just loved following different small businesses and people creating things. And then and it's one of those weird things where we followed each other on social. We never met each other. I've never got a chance to meet you. And then ironically, we met at one of my podcast guests, which is our home supper club. I got to go do that. And
Yeah.
ironically, when I was there, one of the folks that got to be there was Chelsea from Yaya and Lou, and you're really good friends. And which is hilarious because she told me you were one of the people that she told me that I should go talk to have on the podcast.
Such a small world.
It is. And then I walked in and it was you. And then we got to hang out and talk. And I was like, oh, I definitely need to have you. I'm like, I definitely want to talk with you because we hit it off. And I think I really love like what you're doing and what you're creating. And I just kind of was like, man, I'm like, we really should have, we should spend some time and talk a little bit and then get to have some people, listen to it and kind of get to know you a little bit more about it and what you've done and how things went. So, like I mentioned, I know originally you were Gypset, in 2020 you shifted, and I love
Mhm.
how it's kind of like one of the things I love from what I read is like how it's like an ode to people who have been through a lot of different things, and there's like shifting and personal growth and space, and your life obviously shifted as well, and you've kind of wanted to make it more of like an inclusive. High quality jewelry that should be able to be shift with you as you live, like you shift throughout life.
Yeah,
Um,
you said that so nice. I'm gonna write that down.
you wrote it, actually. I think you wrote it. I just found it and I like did my research. But I kind of wanted to talk a little bit about some of these things, like
Yeah.
break it down a little bit because I think a lot of people don't, they probably see your growth and your like, your Instagram and your growth and all that stuff. So they may not understand or kind of like a peek through the veil or into the workshop of like what you've kind of had to evolve and how you've evolved. So I think
Mm.
that this might be a good spot for me. Like I'll shut up and you just kind of share with me a little bit of like, of that journey and kind of how the name change and all of that.
Yeah, man, a journey. Okay, yeah, this is a journey. Yeah, it's crazy how different the brand is from when it started to where it's at now, and how different of a person I am now than I was back then. Just for like context, I know I mentioned that I, started the business by making bridesmaid jewelry. In 2020, I went through a divorce, and so that was like a whole big like me finding myself again, and it kind of is what like ignited this like big change in the brand. I feel like I was like, I don't know, like capsulated as this like identity for so long, and I don't even know why, but I just like felt like I couldn't come out of it. Like I
Yeah.
was just like this super boho feminine jewelry brand, and when in reality like I wanted to like kind of go on a little bit of like the darker side sometimes, or like make a little bit more like masculine pieces or whatever it was, but I felt like I just like pigeonholed myself into this like very like free people-y boho style, and I was just like becoming, I don't know, just like super sick of it. And also at the same time, a lot of things were like kind of blowing up in my life, so it's like I was being forced to shift into a new life, and I at the time I felt like my life was ending. Like I was like, this is all so bad, so scary. Change is so scary, and then trying to like break out of this like mold that you were for so long, and then to try to create a new version of you is like insanely scary, especially when your like life is at stake as far as like finances and like supporting your child and all that goes. Um, but it was weird, like, there was, like, all these signs from the universe, like, pushing me in this direction, even though I, like, felt it, I needed to do this, I needed to change the name, it didn't feel like me anymore, I needed to rebrand, I needed to, like, really have this jewelry and brand, like, speak Sam, and before it was, like, speaking, like, 20-year-old Sam, and I was so scared that was never gonna, like, evolve.
Yeah.
Um, so it's, like, in 2020, I left, separated from my husband, and then but like 2 months before that, I got served a trademark lawsuit. So I was like, oh no, what am I going to do? And it was for the name Gypset. And just so coincidentally, I'm telling you, it's like so weird how life happens like this. I'm dealing with this trademark lawsuit. I ended up winning the case because the woman didn't have jewelry in her trademark, but she did have like clothing. So it's also when I opened a retail store in the Hourglass district with Freehand, and I
Yep.
was selling clothing. So they just like, I had to like limit my offerings. It was like this whole thing, but it ended up not being that big of a deal. And then like 2 weeks after that, I got like mildly canceled on TikTok, and it was brought to my attention. Like I had zero clue of this. Like I found the name Gypset on like a Pinterest board from like a surf brand back in like 2010. I thought it was a cool name. Um, but I learned that it is derived from a racial slur, and I was like mortified and like couldn't sleep over it. I was like, oh my gosh, how could I just be out here like having this brand like this and never knowing that was
Yeah.
what I was doing? and like making money off of it, like that's crazy. It made me feel super icky. And so, I acknowledged it on the internet and I was like, yeah, I mean, there's nothing to say except for you're right. Like, this is crazy. And I can't believe that I've even gone this long with using this name.
Yeah.
Got a lot of education, learned a lot about it, and really just, you know, made me have to do the rebranding quicker than I had maybe planned to. But I think I sometimes in life I need a push like that. Like I needed it to be like, no, you're changing the name, or else I'm just gonna probably like, be super relaxed about it and never really get into that new identity that I needed to get into so badly.
Yeah.
So yeah, I went on a mountain retreat with some of my best friends, and I thought we were just going for fun. And they like sat me down at a table one night, and we're like, we're brainstorming new brand identities for you. And they're like, gave me all their thoughts. We went around the table like saying names and like, and then we made the name. Like it just came out. I don't know how it happened. Like it just happened. And we were like, shifted. Oh my gosh, shifted. This is perfect. And then it was like, I like started crying because I was like, wow, this feels like so deeply personal. And like, I just knew it was right. So yeah, and then we did the rebrand and it was like, wow, I feel like I'm fully like this person now. Like this is me.
Yeah. No, first off, major props to your friends for
Mm,
taking you to go do that and like and be that. I mean that like that's pretty amazing to have friends that realize that and kind of
yeah.
like sit you down to be able to do that and to want to do that. I think that's like so important to be able to do that, to have that support system, to be able to kind of help you with that. So I think, that it's really, and the mere fact, also the fact that you kind of, you could have gone many ways. I mean, obviously it's amazing what happens when life shifts and changes and you have to kind of, your back's against the wall because you basically were like, hey, my life is changing and I want to continue doing jewelry and doing everything. And I'm going to have to come up with something because other people could have been like, well, you know what? I'm just not going to do this anymore. I'm just going to shut it
Hmm.
down. So I commend you on that. I think that's awesome. I know you do earrings, rings, necklaces, bracelets. Do you have a favorite that you like to create, or you like that, like, it's kind of like right now, like is an area that you love, like creating and being able to do stuff with?
Yeah. So also when I started Gypset, it was a lot more. I didn't know how to metalsmith then, so it was all like beadwork, simple stuff like like assembling jewelry more so. And a couple of years into Gypset, I took metalsmith classes and I, learned how to be a metalsmith. And I'm still learning. I'm still like trying to figure out how to do it. But I would say like anything that like requires like a fire and like flame, I am enjoying right now. I feel like I'm like in a man cave sometimes. I'm in my studio, just like a dad tinkering in the garage. So I feel sometimes because it's just like all the equipment is very like, I don't know, hammers and torches and crock pots of acid. Like it just feels like so like, I don't know, rough and fun.
Yeah.
So that, I mean, as far as metal smithing goes, like I love to make rings. I've been on a big like chains thing lately where I've been making chains from scratch because everything, I'm sure everybody knows this, like the price of everything has gone up like crazy and that deeply affects gold and silver.
Yeah.
So chains have gotten so expensive. Raw materials have become so expensive. So I'm just like, what if I could just like stop having to buy the chains? I can make them instead. And then I can charge more because nobody else can possibly have this because nobody else is like, I'm not buying it from the same supplier.
Yeah.
I made it with my hands. So
Yeah.
I would say, yeah, making chains right now is like it takes me a long time. So it's like a good patience game because I'm not the most patient person. And it doesn't require like a lot of tedious work. It's actually, there's like a lot of like room for error and they still look good. And I really enjoy work like that because I'm not a perfectionist.
Yeah. No, and I also like it because each one is not each one's the same. Then I would
Yeah.
assume, right?
Hmm.
When it comes to that, and I know one of the things that I've read from when I was like researching, you try to use a lot of like recycled metal when possible. I know you use like 14 karat gold filled sterling silver or
Hmm.
solid gold in your designs and stuff like that, which I think is I think that's like a huge thing to be able to kind of do, especially if you have to use what you have and what's available to you, to kind of create things. I read that you kind of created, something called like deep parts of your heart. Like, how do you balance how do you how do you balance the love of creating jewelry but
Mm.
also make it a full-time job? I mean, that's such a hard thing, and it's something that you and I kind of talked about during dinner, because like you're obviously like, I have a full-time job, so I do Deli Fresh Threads on the side, but this is your job and your business and something that you love to do. How do you balance
Oh boy, I don't know. That's a good question. Does anybody know the answer to that? Um, yeah, I don't know. I think it's definitely a constant learning game. I'm forever figuring out that answer to that question. And I think in every season it looks different for me. Sometimes I love the chaos. I love being like right now I'm in the middle of just like it being like pure like chaos as far as like um volume of orders online and like collections that I'm like in the middle of and like events coming up. Like I feel like I'm in this like chaos mode, but I am like thriving in it and I love it. And then sometimes I like can't physically do it. It's like too crazy. Um, but I think that, you know, it's 10 years of doing business. I feel like I have learned how to sell jewelry to people. And sometimes it's not necessarily like what I love to make. I just know that people are going to buy it and people are going to want it. So it's that's also really interesting kind of thing that happens in like I'm creating art and then it's like what how much of the art am I creating is purely for me and like my love for it and like from my heart and how much of it is I know how to sell this and I know what people are going to buy and it'll turn out nice, but it's not something that like necessarily like came from like deep within me. So that's more of like how I try to yeah, like my
yeah.
balance is how do I figure that out and what feels good and what doesn't.
So what's funny is that's very similar to some of the things I've talked to chefs about,
Mm,
when because or even like when I've talked to different people, because like what happens is some of the things, like let's just say for argument's sake, like as much as you like making rings and necklaces and stuff like that, like you're like, oh, I'm doing the same, same type of ring or same necklace because it sells. But at the same time, like it's kind of like how restaurants, they have like the classics where everyone is expecting the
mm-hmm.
consistency of it, but then they have the specials, and the specials are the creative outlet of the person, which is kind of your
Yep,
collections get to be the
exactly.
collective the so that's kind of how you I'm assuming that's kind of how you figure out that balance of doing, of like, this is what my customers want, but I also get to do a little bit of different things that I want with my collections, and flex
Hmm.
my creativity and do my creativity.
Yeah, because sometimes and a lot of times what happens is I'll do like the part of it that's like the staples, you know, and then I won't even want to like sit down and play at the bench because I'm just like I just am like bored of it
Yeah.
all and burnt out about it all. But lately I've been like making myself for like 30 minutes a day, even if I just sit at the bench and stare at it and don't create anything, just like sit and look at it, look at what I have, maybe just like put a few things around each other, like, you know, just like play around. I feel that I'm like, okay, I got to do something that was for me. Even if I didn't like
Yeah.
what came out of it, I'm like, oh, that I did it. Like I had that idea in my head. I made it. Maybe it's not the best, but it's like just like all practice.
Hmm.
And I feel like I just have to keep doing those things. I have to keep playing or else it'll just become like really dreadful for me.
No, I totally get that. Um, I I want to. I definitely. I will definitely commend you. On a few things. Obviously, the great work that you do with the jewelry and everything like that is beautiful, and
Thank
obviously,
you.
but I also want to commend you on the fact that I really appreciate like how you have no problem being very real and transparent on some things. I read some articles on stuff from like the community paper, which has been like they're great. I love how they support a
Mhm.
lot of different small businesses, but there's so many things that like kind of like I was like, oh, I like that I appreciated reading or hearing from during interviews that you did. I'll give like some examples of stuff like one of the ones that you talked about was the fact that you like how originally when you started you wanted to grow so fast and do wholesale, and then
Mhm.
you put and like you were like, and obviously it was great because it like there's a plus and minuses of wholesale. Like you get to get your name out there. You're like in more stores. People know who you are. But then at the same time, you're also realizing like, hey, I'm selling my things for for less, and it's overshadowing my work and the
Mhm.
margins and all of those things. And I think like that's like the hardest part of like balancing of that, because like the level of growth, and at the same time seeing that, I also think I appreciate the fact that like I know that you've done, like you said, like you were originally in a shop with freehand, and then you
Mhm.
were in a shop, you were I think I got one point at B Home, and like having like a location, but then and then kind of realizing like, hey, maybe I don't need a location, maybe I can do it from home. Because there's a lot of things that you kind of sometimes on your journey of a small business, you want to have all these things like the checklist, right?
Mhm.
And I think you've kind of and I kind of want to talk a little bit about that, like that checklist, because like you said, you had like a mobile, kind of like a mobile setup, and you had all these things, and then like as you started accomplishing these goals, you then kind of realized and we're like, hey, is does this work for me, does it not work for me, and had the honest conversation about it. And so I kind of wanted to know a little bit about some of those things, because I know that that's got to be tough for usually for a small business sometimes, because sometimes you have this, I don't know, like I kind of look at it as like a perception thing, right? Like you're like, oh well, I have a shop, and you're like, oh, but I don't want to close up, or I don't want to do this, or I want to be grow big and be in all these different stores doing wholesale. But then you have to kind of look at the big picture. So can you talk a
Yeah.
little bit about that?
Yeah, I think for a really long time I had no like ability and or like eyesight to do like checks and balances. Like it was just like I was just 0 to 100. Here I go. Watch out. And opening a store, doing the trailer, taking it to these places, doing wholesale with 120 boutiques. Like I had no business doing any of these things so quickly. Like I never like stopped and said, does this make sense? What's the game plan here? What's the future look like? What's the, goal here? It was just like, go, 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 and go so fast. And I did it. And then I like crashed and burned. And, and that's a lot of the reason why every time I've had a retail store or these extended pop-ups, they are pop-ups. I've always called them just pop-ups for a reason, because I am the kind of person, and it's probably in most situations to a fault, but I am just like what's next, what's next, like let's, and I get so excited about the new and like the opening of something new that I have never put myself in a position on purpose to be somewhere for too long. And I think that has a lot to do with like my jewelry too, and like my artistic brain and how it works is like I'm on like a specific design kick for a minute. Like I'm like, oh, I'm obsessed with vintage right now. I'm like going 0 to 100 with vintage, and then it'll die out for a few months because it's not inspiring me anymore at the moment, and then it'll be something else. So it's like this is just how I operate, and it's not good all the time, but sometimes it's like, okay, this is so fun. And like the wholesale stuff, it's like we learned that lesson real hard, and all of it's a lesson, right? It's all like, okay, well, next time I get into something, I'm going to make sure that I'm actually looking at the numbers this time, and like asking myself like along the way, does this feel good, am I doing good work, all those things. So it's all been like such a learning
Yeah.
thing that I don't have any regrets about it all. I feel like there's been like a lot of like bigger challenges thrown my way, and I feel like I kind of just thrive in the chaos. My therapist will have, not so great things to say about this. She tells me that we need to work on it, but I'm like, come on, give me so much chaos. I will literally kill it. But maybe one day my life will have less chaos, and then I'll be happy. I'm not sure.
Maybe, or you'll be
Yeah,
bored, or you'll be bored
bored,
and
probably
create and
bored.
try to
Yeah.
create more chaos. No,
Hmm.
I can totally see that. I read that you do, and I wanted to see if it was something you still did. You still do like Ring of the Month Club. Don't you have something like that where people can actually have
Yeah.
like sign up for like almost like a monthly subscription? I'm intrigued
Hmm.
by that. Tell me a little bit more about like what you're offering and what people can get.
Yes, it's a little bit sensitive subject right now because I
Oh,
just no, it's okay, it's okay.
son of a
Um no, it's okay. I just like I haven't like announced it, but I had emailed all of my subscribers that I was taking a little bit of a pause. Um I love it so much, and my customers have loved it. It's been so well received. It's been so fun. I just need to like take a minute and like get it together again. I feel like I got super behind. I always try to have like designs in the works for the
Yeah.
next few months, and I'm like behind 2 months, so it's like I need to just like reassess. But essentially, I'm going to bring it back in the next couple of months. But essentially, it's a subscription service, so it's like how you subscribe to the Birchbox or HelloFresh or whatever these things you get monthly or
Yeah.
weekly or whatever. And it's really like for like our fans, you know. It's like it's not that I could probably charge a lot more, but I try to keep it almost like too good to be true kind of a deal, because I feel like if you're gonna subscribe to this and just be getting a mystery ring that I make every month, you're like really believing in my art, and like you're
Yeah.
really just like here for the ride. And I just think that's so cool. So every month, you know, everyone gets the same ring in the club, and it's just whatever I felt like making, and it's like a complete surprise. Like it could be silver, it could be gold, it could be gemstones and not, it could be kind of crazy or like super, you know, minimal. And everyone is always just like the best, this is the best one yet. I'm like, what? You know, it's funny because I get apprehensive when I'm making new designs, releasing them, because then I'm like, oh, it feels so much heavier if it doesn't sell well. It feels like this is a full failure. With the ring club, I'm like, okay, well, everyone's already committed to getting like
Yeah.
for a mystery thing, so they're gonna appreciate whatever I give them. And so I have my mindset is a lot more of like I can push the boundaries a little further on these, and they'll be received well, because those are the people who are subscribed, or the people who are wanting me to push the boundaries, I think.
Yeah.
So it's been really, really fun. I'm excited to like, I'm gonna do a whole like packaging overhaul and like the branding of it all, get some cool graphics made, get stickers made. So I'm like really ready to like bring it back this year, like, you know, full force, and like try to really pump it up. But yeah, it's really fun. It was an idea I had last summer, and I was like, this is going to be the coolest thing if I can like make it happen. And then I did it, and then we built like a really cool little community of girls who were subscribed to it. So I'm excited to bring it back.
I love it. I love it. No, I think it's super fun, and I think that's why I had to ask, because I was just so intrigued by it when I saw it. You know, when it came to that, because I was like, man, I'm like, that's a cool idea. I've wanted to do something kind of like that, like a shirt
Hmm.
of like a sandwich shirt of the month club. Um, I just haven't figured out how I would do it, because if I did it, it would have to be a smaller scale, because I would want to make it exclusive type thing,
Mm,
so that it's not available for purchase. It's only for those,
yeah,
and that just gets a lot harder.
I
Um,
agree. And it's funny too, because for like a long time I was selling like these like mystery boxes on the website. It was back in the day when I did a lot more like assembly jewelry making. It was less of like the labor intensive metalsmithing. So the cost, like I could justify it a lot more. But we did a lot of like the mystery bags, and sold, we used to sell out every single time. I would have them in the studio. You could buy them in the studio and not know what's inside. And I just feel like there is something so exciting as an adult to still be getting surprised by
yep.
something that's like a good surprise,
Yeah.
and knowing you're going to get it every month. I'm like, I don't know. It just feels like we all need a little joy like that in our
Heck
lives
yeah.
sometimes.
Well, I mean, and if you think about it, that's like the new trend now for even for kids. Kids love the mystery,
Oh,
those
trust
mystery
me. I
boxes
know.
and stuff. So
Yeah.
they all do that. And heck, I will say I definitely appreciate it, because during the holidays, I did do mystery lunch. I have a mystery
Mm.
lunch on my website, but people either do or don't see it. But when they go to an event, they do love picking one of those up. So it's definitely a good thing. Tell me a little bit about, like, so right now, is it mostly you doing online sales? Are you starting to do, do you do more pop-ups? Like how do you balance it, or what's the mix of what you usually try to do to kind of be out in the public, but at the same time, be creating stuff and doing all of that?
Yeah. Yeah. Right now, for the past 6 or 7 months or so, it's been strictly online. Obviously, depending on the season, like holidays, crazy, whatever. And then, like with Valentine's Day coming up, there's a lot more markets happening. So I'm a lot more plugged into those. But let's just talk like off season, like March through summer, whatever.
Yeah.
It's just straight up gonna be online. Yeah. And then I always try to do some sort of pop up at least once a month. Mostly because a lot of people locally are so used to buying their jewelry from me in person.
Yeah.
And I do have stuff at the Owl's Attic. I have like a little mini storefront built in there, but it's not always full of every single thing in every single size. So a lot of times people want to come to a market in person and try on rings and like help me style a ring stack or whatever. So I try to get out there as much as I can. But I think a lot of it too, like the whole burnout that we were talking about, was a little bit of a burnout of markets too. It was just like I'm sure you know this, when you go like market crazy, you're like, what am I doing? Like it's so much work and it feels silly to say because it's like, I don't know. I feel like it shouldn't be that much work, but it is just so taxing. It's just.
I think people, and that's one of those things where I sometimes wish people would see what it is, because it's not just the, oh, they showed up and, Sam just showed up with their jewelry and that's it. Like
Mhm.
it's like prepping everything, making sure you have enough stuff, getting everything ready to go. So there's like all that prep that goes with it. Then getting there early, and it's a whole day event type of thing, because you're getting there early, you got to set up, get everything going. Then once you're done with all of that and being on, because that's the other part, you do have to be
Mhm.
on, and then from there, then shutting it all down and going. It's a full
And
day.
that's like not even to mention the like mental and emotional side of it, like going to a market, setting up, and then like it being so dead. It's like it is like the most like
Yes.
frustrating thing as
Yes.
a vendor at a market to be like, wow, it's dead, and now I'm just sitting here all day wasting my time.
Yes.
Um, so yeah, it's a hard thing. Sometimes I'm like absolutely obsessed with it and love it. Like I've Mellow Market this Sunday,
Mhm.
and I would go to Mellow Market every weekend if I could, because it's like all of my best friends are vendors. Brittany and Augie, who own Owl's Attic, are super close to me. And so it's just like, wait, this is work. This is fun, you know?
Yeah. And that's kind of the key. That's the key to building those relationships with, like, when you do those events, because then you're like, oh, I get to hang out with all my friender
Mm-hmm.
vendors, and type of thing, and
Mm-hmm.
do all that. So I totally agree with that. That's something that I enjoy when we get to do those, get to do different markets, especially with your friends and stuff like that. It's obviously, I enjoy markets even more when it's like crazy ass busy and you're like selling, and you're like, you can't, as much as you want to say hi to your friends, you're like, hey, what's going on, how you doing? And
Mm-hmm.
like, you're like, well, I gotta go, I'm selling here. I'm like, like when you have that, that's so much more. I definitely enjoy that more than when it's slow. But because
Yeah,
then you start kind of going like, oh, I'm like, I could have been doing all these other things or whatever. But and it's just kind of how it goes sometimes when it comes to markets.
that's just
So
how it goes.
yep. So when you're not doing jewelry and not working on, shifted jewelry, what's something that you like to do on your for fun?
Oh man, I I play soccer. Still like on the adult leagues. I
Okay.
love that. It's like my escape from life. It's like that, people say like, what's the one thing you could never give up? I'm like, it's that for me. Like I tore my Achilles 2 years ago playing soccer and was like, couldn't walk for 5 months. And everyone's like, why are you playing again? And I'm like, I won't stop.
Yeah.
And it's just like, I just need it. Um, I hang out with my kid a lot. He's almost 10, so it's just really fun right now.
It's a fun age. It starts to get
Yeah,
it gets even more fun it gets more fun, and
harder.
then
Yeah.
yeah, and then it gets harder. There's like elements to it. But yes.
Yeah. And I just love like being with friends. Like I'm just like I'm the one that's always texting everybody like, are we meeting for happy hour? What are we doing today? I haven't seen you in like 3 days. What are we doing? Especially Chelsea.
Yeah.
We like if we go more than 48 hours without seeing each other, we're like, are you okay?
I love that. And you also love to cook.
Oh,
So,
I love to cook. Yeah.
yeah.
And that's the one I hold like really close to my heart, like along with soccer. It's like it's like an intimate thing to me, and like I don't think a lot of people that know me know it. Unless you're like a really close friend of mine, you've probably been over and I've made you eat my food. But it is like my art form that I like need in my life.
I love that. No, I think, and it's important to have those things. I think it's important to have something that you do. To me, a lot of times, like, that's like the big thing for me. I love the idea, and we were talking about this, like the idea of being able to chop all the vegetables and
Mhm.
saute and get all those
I'm like,
things.
I
And
need to cut a whole
yeah.
onion.
Yeah, I want to build those layers, and I want to cut
Yeah.
them, and I want to do all that. And it's like, and then some people are like, why would you do that? It's so
Mhm.
labor intensive. And I'm like, yeah, but I kind of like, I just get in a groove, and it's just almost like relaxing in a way when I go. So I definitely feel that. for when it comes to being able to cook and do things like that. I'm always loving to, like, I joke because my wife and I have a combo where my wife will come up with the idea and then I'll be the one that executes it. So like a lot
I
of
love
times
that.
that's kind of how it'll go. Like she'll be like, "Well, what about this?" Or she'll be like, she'll start with this and then give me like I'm really bad at planning it, but then she'll be like, "Well, what about this?" And I'm like, "Ooh, what if we added this and this from the
Mm,
pantry?" And then we like add some extra
yes.
layers to it. And then she's like, "That's why you're cooking, because you make it, you give it that extra."
Yeah,
You
that's
know?
the best. Yep.
Yeah. No, I totally agree with that. You mentioned, and again in another article,
Hmm.
and it was one of those things where I thought you've kind of mentioned it before on some of the things, but on going kind of like sometimes the best thing to do is kind of go to take steps going backwards.
Hmm.
I want you to kind of talk a little bit about that, because I do think that, like, obviously you've kind of, between the burnout, and burnout is real for a lot of small businesses, and even just kind of like what you've kind of done, even creating and being able to understand that limitation of like, hey, maybe I should stop here and take a step back. Talk a little bit about that idea of of sometimes having to take that step and going backwards instead.
Yeah, I think that a lot of it just comes down to my like mental and emotional state. As far as like taking a step backwards, I think that the practical part of me, the business part of me is like, no, keep moving forward, build and grow. And like that's the energy, in social media and stuff. And I believed it for so long. I was like a slave to it. I'm like, yes, grind, yes, work hard, yes, girl boss, yes, all these things that they're telling me to do. And then I did it, and then I was like, wasn't I supposed to be happier? Like now, like this isn't the part where I am happy. And then I started to realize that no, it's actually not. And why is that? And it's because I just was trying to get to that place where I thought it was supposed to go, and I was completely missing, so many steps along the way. And so in the last like year or so, I've like identified this for myself and been like, okay, like how do I go back to the part that felt good? How do I go back to like finding joy in my work, or back to like, you know, being excited and proud of what I'm doing and putting good work out? Like how do I get back there? Because right now I feel like I'm in like a very different place than what feels good in here. Um, it's a crazy, it's not a fun thing to look at.
Yeah.
Especially and then to admit to, because it's just like, okay, well, I don't even know what going backwards looks like. I've only gone forwards, on purpose. I've definitely gone
Yeah.
backwards on accident. I'm like, whoops, shouldn't have done that. But yeah, to like make the conscious choice to go backwards is one of the harder things I've done, I've realized. I do believe it'll be the most rewarding thing that I've done. And I think that most of that will just be because of like my mental state. I think that it'll like preserve my happiness the longest is to take steps backwards. And I'm still figuring out what that even looks like. Like,
Yeah.
at the forefront, it looks like closing the studio and then going strictly back to online. Okay, that's like the big step backwards. And at least outwardly, that's what looks like a step backwards, right? I look at it as like a step forward, in a lot of other ways,
Yeah.
because it made my business better, and it, cut a lot of overhead I didn't need, blah, blah, blah. But I try to like just lead every day and like think every day of just like, okay, is this decision a decision that I've made in the past that helped, that was good or bad? Did it like make me feel better, or did it make me feel worse? And then I operate that a lot like that in my personal life too. I've been trying to. I'm not perfect at it, but
Yeah.
I've been trying really hard to do that in business too, because then it's like I don't have to make jewelry that doesn't feel good to me.
Yeah.
I have to make jewelry that doesn't feel good to me when I have a rent to pay for a studio, or I have expectations on like a store being filled. That's when I have to do those things, and it doesn't feel good, but my rent's being paid and I'm making more money, but it's like, but then it doesn't feel good. So it's just like this constant like fighting within myself, and it is like so bad, but we all do it. And especially as artists and small businesses too, I feel like we just do that all day long, fight ourselves. And I'm like, why? Why am I doing this? This
Yeah.
is so silly. And so now I'm like trying really hard to only put out work that I actually enjoyed making, which is why I think, it's like this kind of taking a step back, because it's not scaling. It's certainly not growing. It's not, trying to mass produce more and make more money. Like for so long, that's what everybody told me to do. You need to figure out how to get these, made and then just like knock them out, put money into ads and just like blow them up on the internet. And I'm just like, yeah, I guess. Like, yeah, I could do that. I mean, I know there's so many jewelry companies that do that, but it doesn't feel good. It
Yeah.
just doesn't feel good to me. And then it's like, what part of that was joy? What part of that made me happy? Not
Yeah.
not one part of it. Maybe the money that comes in, but it's like I've learned that that is so fleeting. It doesn't matter. Like I really don't care about the money anymore. And I think for so long I cared so much about the money, and that's where it led into this like burnout, you know needing to go back. I'm like, now I'm like, I could just be poor or broke, I don't care, but if I'm putting out like art that I'm like, damn, this is my best work, then I'm like, wow, I win. Like I just most people, a lot of people probably won't agree with me on that one, maybe
But
not, but I just like,
I'm probably gonna say the people that don't agree are people that have not gone through your journey or gone through it. So you know what
yeah.
I mean? Like they're kind of like, what can she possibly be saying? You know, like because they're either in the process of going or trying to get there.
Mhm.
And so sometimes it's kind of hard when you're like, when you don't walk on someone else's shoes, it's kind of hard to be able to understand that perspective. But
Yeah.
I appreciate it, and and it's something that I get. I'm very I get a lot with just, and I could totally understand because it is the key of that, and that's kind of for me. Like I was always having that battle as well because my whole thing was like, man, I should really like this should be like full time. My business should be full time, and it should be this,
Mhm.
and it should be I should have like a shop or I should do this because that's kind of like everyone's always like, oh, you're gonna get a food truck, you can do a food truck and sell your clothes in a food truck. I'll be like, yeah, it'd be badass. But guess what? I'm like, when I'm a millionaire, maybe. But
Mhm.
I'm like, do you know how much that costs? Like, and do you know how much that makes my markets when I sell at a market? It costs that much more to sell at because I'm a truck now because I take more space. I'm like,
And
and
the
you
the labor involved, like it's so much more
correct.
logistically
And the
like, oh my god,
insurance
that's
and
a
where am I going to
nightmare.
keep it? I was
Yeah,
just like,
no.
yeah, no. I'm like, I can't. I'm like, I'm okay doing it in this room in my house. I was
Mhm.
like, I'm perfectly fine right now. I'm like, I want to have the growing pains, but let me get there and then I'll deal with it. But for now, I'm like, I'm fine. And it's okay to be, I guess it's okay to be okay with where you're at this point in time and just kind of improve and tweak and go from there. Cause things like you said, like just like your brand, it shifts and you just kind
Mhm.
of have to go with it. You got to be able to pivot with it.
Yeah, and I feel like I'm like, as far as like brand goes in general, I feel like it because I've like recently rebranded, and because I've like, you know, been outwardly vocal about like taking a step backwards and like all that. I feel like I have permission to do things now that like it would have been like weird if I did it, I don't know, 3 or 4 years ago. Like I want to completely redo all of our packaging and like as if I started the brand, yesterday. I want
Yeah.
to like overhaul it, but it's like now it's like people just be like, oh yeah, we get it. Like it makes sense that you're, or like I want to redo so many things, like the way I've done things, and like I think people are just like a lot more warm to it now because I'm like, this is what I'm doing, guys. I'm like reevaluating. I'm going backwards. I'm like, it's just got like it's just a journey.
Yeah. No, I absolutely love that. What advice would you give someone for wanting to start something?
Like a small business.
Anything you want, you can take it as for anything. I try to make it open ended so that way you can kind of take it as any form of advice. But yes, small business works
Yeah,
or something that they're passionate about. But what advice would you give them for wanting to start something?
I know it's gonna sound so cliche. I wish I had a better answer for this, but I just really feel like you just have to do it. Like I don't know. I operate very extremely on like the if I have like a good thought, a good idea in my head, and I have the means to get it done, I'm just gonna do it, and I'll figure it out if it worked or didn't after. I don't put a lot of planning or pressure on things. I'm like, oh, I'll do that. Like let's just do it and see what happens. Um, because worst case scenario, it fails, who cares? Like
Yeah.
especially like not to be like woe is me or Debbie Downer at all. I'm literally just saying this as like out of experience, but it's like I thought, I got married. I thought I was gonna live happily ever after. 10 years in, it's done. It's like who cares? Like everything is so fleeting, and like I can't. I don't have any regrets in my life. I've made huge failures. I've had huge, bad things happen to me, And yeah, some of them kind of sucked or they were really hard to get through or to grow through, but it's like, how cool is it that I have like so much life experience and like so many stories to tell and like all of these like big pieces that make me who I am, and they don't all have to be good. There's a lot of them that are sad and not pretty, but I just my big thing is like, okay, so start it and then what? It sucks. Okay. Now it sucks.
Yeah.
Or you won't live in regret of like, I wonder if I would have, started that clothing boutique when I was 30. That was a cool idea. Well, if you have the means to do it, then do it. What are you doing?
Yeah.
I
No.
don't know. I just feel like there's too much pressure on this like business plan. And I'm not saying that's not smart, depending on what you're doing, but all this like pressure on, will it be successful? Will I kill it? Will this work? Blah, blah, blah. I'm just like, who knows?
Yeah.
Literally nobody knows, and the social media climate, small business climate is changing so drastically so often that it could be you could kill it right now and then not next year. So it's like you might as well try it now, or
Yeah.
it might be the opposite. I don't know. I just like, just do it.
When just out of curiosity, when you out of the comment of just doing it and kind of going with the thought process, are you the type? So, well, and I'll use the swimming pool analogy. I'm always kind of curious on this. Are you the type? And I think I know the answer, but I'm going to ask it anyhow. Are you the type to dip your foot in the water and then jump in, or are you the type to run in and jump
No,
in?
yeah, fully jumping
Yeah,
in.
that's what I
Yeah,
thought. Okay, that's what
yeah.
I figured. I figured
I knew
that.
that wasn't going to be a surprise to you.
Well, I mean, well, and I think a lot of it is either like, and it's kind of obviously, and when I ask that question, it can be to a degree. It could be like, oh, do you go balls to the walls? And you're like, I'm going all in, and we're doing, I'm like doing everything. Like I'm buying new machines, I'm doing all this stuff. Like, I like,
Yeah.
and like, there's that aspect, and then there's also the aspect of like, I'm gonna do it, but I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna try to do it as smart as possible, and build myself up to it. Because there's
Hmm.
those two elements that sometimes some people go all in and they're like, I'm buying like all the things, and then others are more of like, okay, well, I'm gonna start it. I'm gonna start with this and then start building from it.
You know what I think it is? As you're saying that, I'm like realizing this about myself. I think I am that way because the excitement to me is so fleeting. Like when I'm excited about something, I'm like, oh, I have to do it literally right now. Like I have to do it right now. I have all these ideas. Let's get it going. Let's start it. Like Ring Club was kind of like that. I had that idea, and in literally like 72 hours, I was like, it's launching. Like full. I haven't thought through it all. I have no idea how it's going to work, but here's the link to subscribe. Let's go. And so now, kind of that's why I'm kind of having to go backwards again here and that, because I just jumped all the way in and it got all these subscribers, and I was like, oh crap, now you guys are expecting a ring from me every month, and I'm like really behind, and now I'm like, I don't have anything like, this is not good. But I'm just like, if I wouldn't have just done it in that moment of excitement, my excitement would have died eventually from it, and
Yeah.
I would have questioned it 100 times. Is this a good idea? Is this stupid? Is anyone going to sign up? Who cares? And then if I just do it, then I'm like, okay, well, I could have done this a little bit better, but there's opportunity now to change it and to edit
Correct.
it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know.
I love that. I love that. Where can people follow? Where can they shop for some jewelry? Where can they follow you online? Tell people everywhere, and they'll be on the show notes as well.
Okay, cool. Yeah, on Instagram, social media, it's Shifted Jewelry with no E in the shifted. So it's shift with a D together. And our website is shiftedjewelry.com. And then locally, every day, you can shop at Owl's Attic. I just redid our little store inside there, so it's looking really good and cute. And then our social media has all of our events coming up. So, and I'm always on the lookout for a new space. I know this is going to sound crazy. All my friends are like, Sam, please stop. But I am like always looking for like a little 6 monther somewhere, or like a couple months of doing a little build out a little store. So that's always on the horizon for me too. So I always, most of my Orlando local customers know that like she won't be gone long. Like she'll reappear somewhere around town with a little pop up or store sometime soon.
No, I think it's great. I love the fact because it's something new. It gives you something. It's exciting, and then you kind of spreading the wealth around the city. So that's kind of I
Yeah.
love that. I love that. Sam, I really appreciate you being on and chatting with me. A lot of fun. I'm super excited. I will be ordering. I mentioned this, but I will be ordering something. My wife. It doesn't matter. My wife doesn't listen to the podcast, so I'll definitely I will be getting my wife a necklace
I love
from
that.
you. So, but I definitely love it, and I think that's one of the ones, like the one that you're wearing. I know that's like one of the
Hmm.
first ones you've ever done, and I think
You
it's
know,
just cool looking.
when you texted me, you called it the grandpa chain, and I was laughing
Yes,
so hard about it to Chelsea. I was like, I think I
yes.
have to rename it the grandpa chain.
Because it's called, is it the Granada? Is that what it's called?
Granada.
The
Yeah.
Granada, and my freaking phone gave it to grandpa. I'm like, yeah, the Granada, right? That's the one. And then it said grandpa, and I didn't even proofread it. So that made me laugh when you said that to me.
So funny.
Um, but no, thank you so much for being on the show. If you definitely are in the, definitely take a look, follow her online, check out her store. If you see her at a pop-up, go come visit her, and definitely check out, see some of the beautiful stuff she's done. She's got some really fun, just some fun things. But and what I like about it is it's wearable, it's classic, it's got like that, it's got that look where it's got a mixture of everything from, you can go for everyday wear, type of thing, type of look, but at the same time, you can also class up an outfit, accessories. You got to accessorize, right?
Yeah.
That's
Yes.
always the key. If you definitely make sure to check her out, but if you enjoyed the show, definitely make sure to subscribe. If you want to support my brand, check out Deli Fresh Threads. Thank you. Until next time, keep eating sandwiches and follow your passion.
Bye.